Hello, friends. I'm Maggie Ostara. I am a sovereignty mentor and a human design expert. And I like to share a human design point of view of what's going on with us astrologically. Now, astrology is a part of human design, but we tend to think about things a little bit differently in the human design world. And I find putting them together to be very illuminating. So if you're coming from an astrology background, some of this may be new to you. And if you have more of a human design background, some of the astrology might be more new to you. So it's great to really put them together because they make a very rich combination. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon in Scorpio that's happening on May 1st. It's the first of two full moons happening in May, and the second one is happening on the 31st, so that will be a blue moon. But this one is happening in Scorpio on May Day. And let's just remember that May 1st is known as Beltane in earth-based spirituality. So it is a sacred day, even without a full moon. And so now it's going to have a big full moon on it. So very, very potent day. So let's go ahead and take a look at the particulars. So this full moon will be happening in the gate 44. So that means that the Earth and the human design system and the moon will both be in that gate 44. So the gate 44 is known as energy in traditional human design or truth in quantum human design. It's on the spleen center and it is in the commerce circuit of the tribal circuit. So because it's on the spleen center, it always has a fear, and its fear is the fear of the past. In traditional human design, it's also known as a gate of memory, like where we hold memory. And so our opportunity here is to take a look at our relationship with the past and be able to evolve our relationship with it so that it is more beneficial for us in the present. I did a video not long ago where I really talked about a saying that I have that has to do with becoming sovereign, because my work is really about becoming sovereign. I wrote a book on feminine sovereignty, and that phrase is make peace with the past. That's the first step. Make peace with the past so we can come fully into the present, because when we're fully in the present, that's when we can command the future. But if we're always being pulled back into the past, or the past, our memories and our thoughts about the past are overriding our sense of being in the present, then we really can't command the future. Because what tends to happen is we take whatever it is that we were thinking about the past and we project it out into the future, right? And then we just create more of the past. And so what we want to be able to do is really make peace with that past so that we can come fully into the present. So the gate 44 is a huge ally for us in that, actually, because the spleen center is known as the center for instinct and intuition. Now, there's a much bigger story here in the human design world that has to do with the solar plexus mutation and the fact that we are moving from being more of an instinctual being to being more of a creative being. Because the spleen, like I said, we tend to get mired in instinct and in fear when we have a lot of the splenic energy going, unless you've really evolved out of realizing that most of the things that we feel afraid about are just figments of our imagination. They're not actually things that are going on in the real world. So we need to evolve that, right? So when we look at the 44, which is on the spleen center, like I said, its fear is the fear of the past. And what we want to be able to do is tell the truth about it, right? Because now it's named truth. We want to have truth about our memory. Now, I will say here on the side that since I really became certified in neurosomatic intelligence, which is a body of work that helps us to partner with our nervous system. And one of the things that I learned in that is that we don't ever have a full, accurate memory of the past. It actually doesn't exist. We have fragments of memory, and then our brain puts those fragments together and presents it to us like a memory. But it's actually creating the memory as much as it is pulling it up from the past. And the way that it does that is by looking at our interpretive mechanisms and saying, well, how do we know how to interpret what's been going on? So it's all very subjective, is my point. Is the memory is not ever clear, ever. It doesn't exist literally in the brain. We have flashes, we have, impressions. You could have a full thing that feels like a movie, but your brain is actually creating an awful lot of that. So if we hold that that's a possibility, even if you're like, wow, I'm not really sure about that, but if you hold that as a possibility, when we think about, okay, well, so then what is memory for me? What is my relationship with the past? How much of it am I making up now, where I try to remember what something was like when I was 7 or when I was 2 or even when I was 19, right? I try to remember what that was like, but it's always going to be partial. The other thing is that traumatic experiences tend to be lodged more loudly in our memory. We tend to remember the emotional states, the feeling states, all of that, and it kind of locks in. If it's coming out of that survival brain, it can really kind of lock in. And what happens is it gives us a distorted sense of the past. We tend to have the trauma is something that we remember more. And it's also what comes up for us to revisit, because that's how we heal, right? Is the parts of us that still have a trauma imprint will present themselves to say, we need healing here. And that's what we might think of as triggers. So a lot of our healing has to do with our ability to, yes, meet the trauma imprints and do the processing that we need to do in order to heal that, but to also recognize that that is partial. And I've done work with many different clients and also with myself where I want to balance out that brain's tendency to go towards the negative and to say, well, but what other wonderful things happened for you? And if you can't remember some of them, you could even make them up, because the truth is your subconscious doesn't really understand the distinction so much between an imaginative story that you energize with a lot of emotion than it does with something that actually happened. And one of my favorite spiritual teachers, who is a light being named Oren, was channeled by Snare Roman. This is a wonderful book. It's over 40 years old, but I always encourage people to read it. And there's a part in here where Oren is talking about how you can get a hold of your imagination to create your experience more purposefully and not by accident. And he's saying another way to change your present reality and create the reality you want is to rewrite the past. Everything you have now is the result of a choice or decision you made. Each time you make an important decision, you determine what future you create for yourself, right? For instance, you may have quit your job and gone back to school. This gives you a different future than if you continued your job and not gone back to school, right? That's an obvious thing. We're constantly making decisions that send us down certain pathways as opposed to others. As you change your past in your mind, you can change your vibration and begin to draw to yourself a new future. If you want to be more abundant, create a picture of the past in which you were abundant. If you want to be smarter, more creative, mechanical, disciplined, or loved, imagine a past in which you were. It doesn't matter if this was your real past. Your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. It will draw circumstances to you that match your imagined past. Now, I know when I first thought about this, because I have had this book for 20 years or more, I thought, well, that's kind of weird, right? I mean, it's like, but my past is my past. What do you mean go back and change it? But as I've learned more and more how selective memory is anyway, and how much our brains already make up our pasts, then I was like, wow. So you could do this, for example, in a very practical way. There's 2 different ways that I would suggest that you think about it. One is that, and this is one of the things that Oren recommends, is that you actually go back to an experience where it was, you had some kind of traumatic event. Let's say you saw your parents arguing, right? And that was really difficult for you and it created a trauma imprint. Right? You could go back into that memory and actually imagine them. Even if you imagine them still having the fight, you could imagine them making up and being together and then bringing you into that so that you have that sense of resolution with their fight and that everything was okay afterwards. So you could make that up for yourself and invest your energy into that. And that could change the way that your decision earlier on might be influencing you still now. So that's kind of changing a memory or amending a memory. After all, memory is selective anyway, because who knows, that might have happened. It might actually have happened, but you don't remember because the trauma is what got lodged in your memory and is still wanting to be healed. But another way you can do it is if you, let's say, if we go to this, the parents were arguing, that was a challenge for you. You could also be like, okay, but what are some memories where when my parents were really in love, or when they were affectionate with each other, or when they were playful for each other, or when they were helping each other out? Things were difficult, but they were really, bonded and helping each other out, right? You can recall for yourself other memories that help balance those out. And so as you do that, you can bring yourself more into current reality. So a third way to work with your memories of the past is to update your interpretation of what happened. So, for example, if you had a situation where you as a young person, let's say you left your bike out in the rain, okay, and your bike was damaged because you left it out in the rain, and your father got really upset with you and blamed you for leaving your bike out in the rain, and then your dad left and he didn't come back, right? And so for you, you were like, oh no, my father left because I left my bike out in the rain. It's like, no, your father left because he was ready to go. It was time. He wanted to leave. And the fact that you left your bike out in the rain gave him an opportunity to be upset, and that gave him the energy he needed to be able to leave. But he was already going to leave. Now, that's kind of an extreme example, but we all have different ones that are like that because as little kids, we tend to think everything's our fault. And especially if the adults around us have that tendency to blame us and say, it's your fault, you did this wrong and all of that. A lot of us grew up with families that are like that. And so you can bring yourself up to date by looking back at that and changing your interpretation of what happened on that day. And to say, I was just a little kid and I left my bike out in the rain and it had nothing to do with my dad leaving. And yeah, I'm bummed that I left my bike out in the rain, but it was not a reason for a parent to leave a family, right? And you can rewrite that for yourself now because now you have the maturity to understand what was actually going on. And that can help to heal and release that trauma imprint that you had where you were still feeling like you are responsible for your dad leaving. So there's so many different ways that we can tell a different truth about the past and break ourselves out of the tendency of us to think about the negative in the past. And like I said, the reason for that, it's actually functional in the sense that it's because the parts that want healing will come up and they'll say, hey, I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I need to heal so that I can relax and release and then integrate more into who you are now, rather than feeling like this broken part of your personality that is still sitting there in that trauma imprint thinking that, your dad left because you left your bike out in the rain, right? You want that part to heal and release and integrate rather than it still being there. So that is a dynamic process that we can get involved in as we're changing our relationship to the past. Let's also remember that Scorpio, so the 44 is in Scorpio, is that Scorpio is the only sign that evolves inside of itself, right? It goes from the scorpion, which stings, to the serpent, who we've been taught to fear, but is actually sacred to the goddess, and then Phoenix, who rises from the ashes. And remember that Pluto rules Scorpio, and Pluto is very much Phoenix energy. And that we're talking about the underworld here, right? Pluto is the god of the underworld. And that is going into our past and our substructure and seeing what is in there that needs to be brought to the surface for the purposes of healing. Sometimes it's intense and we're like, oh my God, this is still coming up, and because of what's going on our planet right now, with the activations from the galactic center that are activating the sun, that are then activating the earth, and the earth and the sun are in this dynamic relationship, which is why we have all these earthquakes and volcanoes that are going on right now, and all of the aurora borealis, and all of us who are sensitive to energy have our ears ringing and having trouble sleeping, right? All of that, right? That is all also influencing us, and it's all bringing in higher frequency energy. And as it's doing that, it's bringing stuff up to the surface, right? All of the things that want to be healed. And so overall, we're in a big cauldron of Phoenix energy where, stuff is coming up. We're burning down the old so that we can, evolve into the new. And so just really be gentle with yourself during this time. Know that if you do have a lot of stuff from the past that's coming up, that are triggers that are coming up, wounded parts of you, trauma imprints that are coming up, there's nothing wrong with you, and you're not doing anything wrong. The thing that you want to watch out for is you don't want to get involved in those old stories and then find yourself in them and then acting them out. That's when you get into trouble. Right? Anytime you have a trigger, anytime you have something that comes up from the past that basically means you have energy about something that is much bigger than the circumstance really, would call for. Anytime that happens, there's something in there that wants to be healed. And the trick to that is to not believe it and not to dive into it. I want to let you know that I have been thinking about this process a lot, because we are all so much in this experience right now because of, like I said, what is going on with the cosmic energy that we're all being influenced by. And I have done a huge amount of work really over the last 25 years, but especially in about the last 3 years, where I have been working a lot with my deep substructure and really working on my own awakening and my own ascension process. And I've had some really deep things coming up. And I was thinking about, well, what is it that I actually do that I can then provide to other people? Because I've already been through it. And it doesn't mean I'm done. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that I have been in this work for a long time. And I feel like I do have some expertise in how to manage this process that I was just describing to you. So I created a model called the Cycle of Awakening, and it has 6 different stages. And what it does is it maps from where we're kind of living in a programmed state, if you will, or a conditioned state, where we're still living inside of the stories that are familiar to us, that we inherited from our families, that we inherited from our culture, from the ways that we were taught to conform so that we could be successful and happy in life, right? This is one of the things that we all grew up with for the most part, is you got to fit in so things will work out for you. And it was a way to try to keep us safe, right? And ideally for us to have a good life. But it also has led us to live inside of boxes that are much smaller than who any of us really is. And so this process of awakening that we're going through is about, kind of stopping and going, wait a minute, why have I been doing this? Why did I agree to do that? What is that? I mean, I had a big aha of this when I was teaching at Columbia, and I realized here I was teaching at an Ivy League university. I'd done, achieved everything I set out to achieve, right? And I was like, wait a minute. Why am I here? Why am I doing, what is this about? And I felt this really deep disruption, because this is what I had been doing for 15 years. And I had a good job, and I had come to this pinnacle of where I was at. And I just knew it wasn't right. And so that started for me almost 30 years ago now. Yeah, pretty much 30 years ago. And so I've been really working with that process. I've been through it a number of different times, where you have this moment and you're like, you start to realize things are not working anymore. I don't feel great doing what I'm doing. Somehow things are really off. And then you start to realize the ways that you've given away your power, you've given away your authority, you've shut down your expression, right? You say yes when you mean no, you say no when you mean yes, all of that kind of thing, right? And then what do? Well, that's the next step, right? That's when you need to go inside and really start excavating what's going on in there. And so I created this whole model for how you do that. And also, what do you do when you go inside? How do you work with what's going on in the inner landscape? How do you work with that trauma pattern, so that you can help it to heal and release and integrate? And then you kind of clear the path, right? At least for the moment, because there's many layers, but you clear the path at that moment, and then you can start to make a new choice. So this is something that I just created a new program around, and I created it specifically for women at midlife, because women at midlife are generally going through this cycle of awakening that I just described. But then we're all on steroids with it right now because of what's going on cosmically. So, most of the people who pay attention to my videos are women at midlife. But if you're not a woman at midlife, you could still benefit from this program because it does have this cycle of awakening in it. So this is it's a small but mighty program. It's called Roadmap to Your Midlife Awakening. And it has some really great tools in it to help you to get yourself into a rested and restored state so that you can actually do this kind of inner work. And then it walks you through the cycle of awakening and also gives you access to a recorded workshop that I did where we walked ourselves through that. So you actually get to have a lived experience of what it's like in the cycle of awakening. And after you go through this, then you have the ability to start to create your own breakthroughs. And I'll come back to this in a minute because there's something else going on with the alignments right now that is related to that. But then you have that ability to not wait for things coming at you from the outside to stimulate you into, evolving to your next level. You actually can master it and do it for yourself. And this is the place that I've gotten to at this point where I know, like, if I start to feel something, or even if I'm like, I want to move forward in a direction and I can feel I'm running into resistance, or I notice that I keep getting distracted, I keep wanting to do that and I keep getting distracted, which is a form of resistance, right? Then I can use the cycle of awakening to proactively go in and break that apart so that then I can actually move forward in the way that I want to. Because it's a new program, I am offering it at a 25% of what it's usually going to cost. It's only $47. It'll be $197 when I put it out in my store. But I wanted to just give it to all of you in a really affordable price if this is something that appeals to you. So the link for it will be down below. The $47 will only be available through Monday, May 4th. So just know you need to get it right away. You can always get it at the retail price if you want to, but that'll be that. And for those of you who register by then, I'm also going to do a welcome session next week as well. So just know if that appeals to you, check it out. Go ahead and get it, and I'll see you hopefully on in the welcome session. I just feel this is such an important process for us to master because of where we're at right now. Let me talk about another piece of this alignment that's going on to the full moon, which also stimulated me to do this, which is you can see here in the graphic that the 2551 is lit up again. So the 2551 is a very potent and important channel, and it's been being lit up really for months now. I mean, it was lit up in the Pisces new moon. It was lit up in the Aries equinox. Both Saturn and Neptune were in the 25. Neptune is still in the 25 through the middle of May, and it's going to move into the 17, but it's going to be in the 17 for a little bit, but then come back into the 25 for most of the rest of the year. And so that 25 has been really strong, and you know about all of those planets in Aries, right? Well, all those planets in Aries are going to go through the 51, which is the mate of the 25. So because the 51 is in Aries. And so we have this channel being lit up over and over and over and over again, and by all of these different planets. And so the cosmos is really like, pay attention here, folks. So the 2551 is known as the channel of the priest or the priestess or the shaman, or the channel of initiation. So the 51 is known as the gate of shock. And it can be a very shocking energy, but it's also the energy of initiation, especially when it marries with the energy of the 25, because the 25 is the love of spirit, and it is about our spiritual connection. And this particular channel also links the will center and the G center, which are the two parts of what the heart chakra was. And so they're really both about the heart. And it's really inviting us to keep breaking through the ways that we have agreed to not be who we really are, the ways that we've given away our power, that we've given authority to others, the way that we've conformed ourselves, all of those things that I was talking about before, right? And initiate ourselves into higher consciousness, initiate ourselves so that we can have that spiritual connection, right? That the 25 gives us. And the message right now could not be more clear about tuning out all of the chaos and the mishigas and the violence and the seductive mysteries that are being put out to us in media, and to go inside, because the 2551 is all about going inside and going into your heart. And when we do this, this is also how we learn to create our own breakthroughs, because when we can initiate ourselves into higher consciousness, we do that through creating breakthroughs. And sometimes that means we have to look at things that are disruptive. We have to look at patterns that we've had in the past and break apart those patterns and then make new choices. So this roadmap to your Midlife Awakening program that has that is right in alignment with what is going on here with the full moon in the 44, and then also this 2551 being lit up. Yet again, it's been being lit up, like I said, all spring long. I want to read to you a little bit from this book by Linda Bonnell, which is coming out of Jovian Archive, which was the founder of Human Design. That was his school. And so this is kind of the official Jovian Archive book. And I want to just read you a little bit today about the 2551. I'm feeling very scholarly because I'm reading books to you today, but they seem particularly potent. So let me just read this to you. The channel 5125 initiation becomes an art. This is the ability to recognize a person's potential for individuation, and when invited to provide the shock, which initiates and empowers them towards it. So this is talking about looking outside of yourself and doing this for someone else. But what I want to say is you can do this for yourself, and that's how you create your own breakthroughs. Okay. There's a natural competitiveness in this channel that challenges humanity to move ahead, be first or win, which has transformed the material, mundane world we live in. I don't know if I agree with that it is competitive. I think it's evolutionary because it is individual circuitry. So it is evolutionary, and evolutionary has a drive to it. I don't know if I would call it competitive, but that's her thing. Okay. So this channel is in the centering circuit, and it says the centering circuit is a powerful mutative forces exerting pressure on humanity to continue to evolve consciousness more deeply into form. Self-mastery and mastery of the world go hand in hand. I think that's really interesting because I think that's very much where we are right now, is we're working on our self-mastery. And as we do that, we become more masterful in the world. For me, that is sovereignty, right? Sovereignty is our ability to be sovereign of our own consciousness, sovereign of our minds, of our emotional state, of our physical bodies, of our auric field, right? That we're growing as spirits in human form to understand what's going on in our substructure more and more, and to heal all of those trauma imprints like I was talking about, so that really your own soul fire can shine even more light from your heart, right? It's just shining that light out into the world. But in order to be able to do that, we have to clear away all of the resistance and all of the trauma and all of things that we tend to kind of dim our light with, right? We go, we don't want anybody to see that, right? But we want to let the light out into the world. And the more that we do that, the more that all of us who are light beings in human form will become masters of this world, not masters of masters over, not in power over, but masters who are here. I like to call it stewardship, because it's evolving our sense of mastery into our awareness that we are actually responsible for the well-being of the living world, right? Responsible in the sense that we need to heal the damage we've done to the living world, and then we need to evolve that. And we also need to do that with each other. So as I mentioned to you earlier, we had all of these planets in Aries. Some of them are still in Aries, some of them have moved on to Taurus, but I wanted to give you this image here that shows you what the gates are in Aries and how they relate to the astrological placements, right? What degree they're at, and what minute they're at, so that for those of you who like to put your human design and astrology together, you can go and take a look at this and see where the different planets are in the different gates, and then how that relates to your own human design chart. Let's remember that according to human design, if you already have an activation in like the 51, for example, like my 51 is already lit up in my natal human design chart, that when all these other planets are going through the 51, from a human design point of view, it wouldn't influence me that much because I already have a consistent way of experiencing that energy. But from an astrological point of view, it would absolutely matter because, for example, Saturn will be activating my South Node because my South Node is in the 51. And so I get to work with what is the relationship between that. In astrology, we would say that they're conjunct. And I have my Sun, my Mercury, my South Node, and those three, and Eris all in Aries in my astrology chart. So there's a lot of activation that's been going on for me while these planets have been moving through Aries. So I wanted to give you this in case you're kind of nerdy like me and you like to take a look at those things, because I think it's pretty interesting and it can kind of help you understand what's going on inside of you by putting those things together. I just want to point out here that the 3740 is still lit up. It's been being lit up because the nodes of the moon are there. So that's the other channel that's there. So this has been with us for a number of months. So it's not a new thing. And it's going to leave soon because the nodes are going to move on in May. And that's going to actually be a really big shift of energy. And let me help. It's always a big shift, when the nodes move. But this one is particularly important, and it's actually very interesting. So some of you may have heard of the prophecy of 2027. That is part of the human design lore, and that has to do with the solar plexus mutation and the chart changing, all kinds of things. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but it's related to the change of the background energy, which is a human design thing, which is that there is a background energy of a certain incarnation cross. And those go on for about 400 years and then they change. So right now we are going to be moving from the cross of planning, which has the 3740 in it. So that 3740 has been with us for these last 400 years. And it has really helped with the development of civilization and of cities, because it's so much about agreements, about bargains and contracts and creating, big societies. And so that energy is fading away, and we're going to be coming into the cross of the sleeping Phoenix, which again, we're in a Pluto cycle. So it's a cross of the sleeping Phoenix. And where the nodes are moving, we are moving into the North Node is going to be in the gate 55, and the South Node is going to be in the gate 59. There is a big story that is happening there. But what I'll say is they are part of the cross of the sleeping Phoenix. So when the nodes shift on May 14th, we're not, it's not going to be a huge thing. You're going to feel all at once. But that is really the old order of the cross of planning fading away. The 3740 is going to fade away. Now, of course, it'll come around every year because that's what happens. But just to say, in the position that it's been in, this is yet another marker of the old order breaking apart and falling away. And then the 55-59 is definitely, that's not a channel, but then the 55 is what we're going to be moving toward. And the 55 is about faith. And the 55 has a big role that it plays in the cross of the sleeping Phoenix. So we are getting it large in May. And so I will do another video about that goes deeper into that, and that also talks about the prophecy of 2027. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I do encourage you to go and check out Roadmap to Your Midlife Awakening. Like I said, it's geared for women at midlife, and you'll see the messaging is about that. And if you are a woman at midlife, it may just totally land for you. I hope it will. But it really is something that the cycle of awakening can be supportive for you, where, whatever your particular gender expression is, and whatever your age is, because that cycle of awakening is so key. So I encourage you to get it. Make sure you get it by Monday if you want that, both the bonus of a welcome session with me. I would love to meet you there, and also to get the $47 pricing. So the link for that will be at the end of the video, and it'll also be down below. And make sure, go out on Friday night, be in the energy of that big full moon. Like I said, it's May Day in the earthquake spirituality. It's a day of celebrating fertility and sexuality and fecundity. It's like what you think of as springtime, right? It's like really just our blessing as creative beings, of fertile beings, having fecundity. It's like, it really is celebrating all of what we see going on in the living world and so on. And so just, enjoy that big full moon, enjoy being outside, enjoy, here we are in the northern hemisphere, enjoy springtime, really just give yourself the opportunity to have that blessing. And, as you have things coming up, because we all do right now, be gentle with yourself and try to give other people, the benefit of the doubt, because they're probably getting stirred up as well. There's just a lot going on inside of all of us. And the more that we can stay out of conflict energy, stay out of judging each other, even when you feel like somebody's really doing something wrong, right? Just to stay out of judgment and just witness as much as you can, and really hold a higher light, a higher consciousness that recognizes that we, each one of us individually, but then collectively, and also our world, are in a deep evolutionary process where everything really is going to be okay. All right. Everything really is going to be okay. I know sometimes when you plug into the media, it feels like it's the farthest thing that could ever happen. But the cosmos do not lie, and they are giving us all of the instructions that we need. And between the gate 44 and the 2551, the instructions are clear. So I hope you will make the best of it for yourself. All right, my friends, many, many blessings and much love.